Hello and welcome to Architecture Basics in the OutSystems platform. So why is architecture such an important thing? Why is it such a big deal? A good architecture will allow you to manage the complexity of your application, enhance the visibility of all the parts that make up your application, therefore allowing you to better plan further developments. It will also facilitate change, make change easier, reduce the risk, and increase the development speed, because it will be easier to split work across different people. So how do you go about achieving a good architecture? It is important to think in a modular way when you're developing code. So what is modular programming? It's a design technique that separates the functionality of a program into independent modules. And now each module in turn contains all of the code, all of the logic, all of the data to carry out one specific function or one aspect of the functionality that your application has. So it's a divide and conquer approach. There are many benefits to modular programming. On the programming side, you get to have better abstraction and encapsulation. This means that you're able to solve just one problem, one challenge, implement one functionality at a time. Furthermore, through the encapsulation, you're able to define what is meaningful to the outside system and only expose those parts. You're able to hide away all of the internal complexities that this module might have and not broadcast it to the outside. This means that some of your modules will actually not be full-blown applications. Rather, they will be libraries. They will provide functionality to be used by other applications. There are also non-programming benefits to a modular programming paradigm. One of them is the optimization of the publication and deployment process. You don't need to recompile everything. You just compile the modules that have been changed. Furthermore, there are work breakdown benefits. If you have different modules that are specialized about different things, you can get different developers working on them, and it allows you to better break down the work between every developer. So how do you achieve modular programming in OutSystems? Now, your full application is actually made up of several modules. Each module can opt to share certain elements inside with other modules. In OutSystems language, these are called public elements. Every module that shares at least one feature is called a producer. And every module that borrows one feature from another module is called a consumer. Obviously, you might have modules that are both producers and consumers. So, of all the things that an OutSystems module can have, what are the elements that can be made public? Well, on the data side of things, you can make entities and structures public. Entities in particular are a very common pattern to use and to make public. In the logic side of things, you can have actions and roles. And again, if you're building a library, it's very common that you will make actions public. In the interface side of things, you can make public web blocks and screens. You will find that web blocks are much more commonly made public. For example, when you create your own widgets, they will very likely be created in a centralized library and be exported as a weblog. Now, after you made your element public and published it to the server, how can you go from another module and borrow that functionality? Well, you access the Manage Dependencies window from Service Studio. In this window, you will be presented with a list of every single module on your server that has at least one public item. To actually consume that item from that producer, you just simply need to tick the checkbox next to it. After you press OK and you come back to editing your module, you'll be able to use every single element that you borrowed exactly as if they had been defined in the current module. So for example, you're able to do queries over entities that you've consumed from another module. You'll be able to call actions that you have also borrowed from another module. When you publish a producer, effectively you're committing to your server a new set of entities, new set of code. It is important then to refresh this code in the consumers. The way to do so is open every single consumer, go to the Manage Dependencies window, and refresh the icons that show that this producer is outdated. You should be particularly careful while architecting your applications so that the modules don't consume other modules who in turn consume themselves, therefore creating circular references. So what are some of the cases where modularization comes in handy? Let's look at a few patterns. One of the scenarios is to group all of the screens that together implement one particular business process. The other case is to wrap an integration with an outside system, therefore hiding away any specifics of the runtime of that external system. Another very common pattern is to wrap business concepts. Wrap every single entity that together works for a particular functionality of your application. So for example, you might have every single entity, every single piece of data that deals with orders and order management in a particular module. You might have everything that's related to an employee, say for example his vacations, his contract stuff, also wrapped around in one particular module. And generally speaking, every time you have some concept, some functionality that is of high reusability, you want to move it to a dedicated module to be used by many applications. Now this was all just scratching the surface of architecture, of modularization. If you want to know more, there's a couple of links on this slide, and in particular, I want to call to your attention the very last link that gives you more information about the 4-layer canvas. The 4-layer canvas is the de facto standard way in which we at OutSystems break up the modules that make up our applications. If you want to know more about the patterns and the names we give to the patterns and how we spread them across the several layers of an application, you should look into this particular link. And that's basically it for Architecture Basics. See you in the next lesson.